more than 1,000,000 years, the African elephant ruled a vast wilderness, serene and unafraid. He is almost invulnerable, the largest and most powerful land animal alive. And with little to fear in nature, the elephant is a gentle giant living in a close and affectionate society. Now, suddenly, the world of the elephant has changed. He is often a powerless fugitive, pursued by an ingenious and implacable enemy. In many parts of Africa today, the elephant and man are on a collision course. As fields and homes and highways invade the elephant's domain, he becomes man's rival, inspiring hatred and fear. This is the story of one group of elephants and their struggle to survive. Hunted, pursued, and harassed, they now take their last stand in the African Eden. Early morning in Nairobi, the capital of Kenya, one of the most politically stable nations in black Africa. From primitive beginnings only 100 years ago, Kenya has grown and changed with dramatic speed. Now, with political independence and economic development, a new day has truly dawned here in East Africa.
This is the general service of the Voice of Kenya, Nairobi. The time is 6 o'clock. Well, it's time once again for our very first program, Breakfast Club from the Voice of Kenya.
Kenya is increasingly urban and industrial. Its economy is hard-pressed to keep pace with the population growth, over 3% a year, one of the highest in Africa. But the people of Kenya seem invigorated and caught up in the modern tides that are sweeping their nation. But another world coexists with modern Kenya, a natural spectacle famed and cherished all over the globe. This is the African wilderness, unique and irreplaceable, a vision of Eden still. Over much of Kenya, the drums of progress are heard dimly, if at all. Plains and forests abound with wildlife, a community of nature little changed since prehistoric times. This is one of the last remaining strongholds of the African elephant. Once the ancestors of the elephant roamed over most of the world, in Europe, Asia, and North America. Now, perhaps 1.5 million African elephant remain in scattered populations across the continent. The elephant is one of the few animals whose social relations closely resemble those of the human family. The ways of elephant society are complex and compassionate. From birth, an elephant belongs to a tight-knit social unit and may remain with it for life, 50 years or more. Curious, playful, and very vulnerable, the young elephant remains in the company of its mother and family for at least 10 to 12 years. Eventually, male elephants will leave to live alone or with other bulls. Females remain in the family, which is usually led by an old and powerful cow, the matriarch. Groups of elephant families make up an elephant herd, and all the elephants in a herd may be related by ties of kinship. The bare statistics of elephant life are staggering. An adult may stand 11 feet high at the shoulder and weigh 6 tons. An elephant eats 300 pounds or more of vegetation a day. The life of an elephant has been aptly described as one long, uninterrupted feast. Understandably, no one is considered to have seen Africa unless he has met an elephant. As a tourist attraction and advertisement, the elephant is beyond compare. But sadly and ironically, the curious and wondering interest the elephant arouses has threatened his very survival. For the elephant bears tusks of ivory, and ivory has become white gold, increasingly expensive and increasingly rare. Perhaps the oldest lure of Africa is ivory, and Nairobi has long been a center of the ivory trade. But in the early 1970s, the demand for ivory products suddenly escalated, and the market erupted into a speculative frenzy.
Yeah, that's right.
Tourists pursuing souvenirs, investors seeking a hedge against inflation, merchants riding a spectacular boom, all contributed to an unprecedented demand for ivory. And though elephant hunting was supposedly subject to stiff controls, more and more ivory magically appeared on the market. The apparent official toleration of the illegal ivory trade created a growing international scandal. Finally, in 1977, the president of Kenya reacted, banning all hunting and outlawing all trade in wildlife products. As the Kenyan government seized existing stocks of wildlife trophies and curios, the full extent of illegal hunting became inescapably apparent. Government storehouses overflowed with the products of massacre. Not only elephant, but zebra, antelope, buffalo, lion, leopard, and giraffe had suffered terribly at the hands of poachers. Vibrant life had been reduced to trophies, curios, and souvenirs at a frightening rate. The full extent of the elephant poaching epidemic in Kenya may never be known, but in 1976 alone, it is estimated that some 200 tons of illegal ivory were shipped to the major international market, Hong Kong. And even now, despite new laws and enforcement measures, poaching continues in many areas of Kenya. Across great expanses of Kenya's wilderness, the elephant had been virtually annihilated. In 5 years, half of Kenya's elephants had been slaughtered. Stripped of their tusks for artwork and jewelry, their feet for refashioning as umbrella stands, the tails to be woven into bracelets, forlorn carcasses littered the land. In the Samburu district of northern Kenya, the elephant's plight was especially severe. Encroaching land clearance for domestic animals, widespread poaching, and prolonged drought brought the Samburu elephants a time of extreme suffering. But in the early 1970s, the elephant themselves seemed to comprehend their peril and sought escape. Many beleaguered herds began, mysteriously and gradually, to abandon the region they have probably inhabited for hundreds of years. By the thousands, they fled south, as if responding to some mysterious inner promise that this way led to safety. The Samburu herds were headed in the direction of Mount Kenya and a highland farming area called the Aberdares. This rich agricultural region has long since been cleared of wildlife in favor of cultivated crops and domestic livestock. With only 17% of Kenya suitable for farming, the land of the Aberdares is heavily settled and highly prized. In the spring of 1978, the Samburu elephants invade the Aberdares in force. Over 2,000 elephant march into farms and ranches only a few miles from major towns. The elephant are safe from poachers in such a densely settled area. But with their huge appetites and casual ways with fences, they are a menace to local farmers. The invading elephants soon attract official attention. Chosen to deal with them is one of Kenya's legendary game wardens, Rodney Elliott. Though officially retired, Elliott cannot resist an opportunity to help the refugee elephants. He has seen the ravages of poaching firsthand and will persuasively argue the case for the elephants when local farmers complain.
Once people knew that I was sort of heading the operation, I became the center of the telephoning in of all these complaints. There was two or three or four telephone calls most evenings, and some of them pretty irate farmers at the other end. And so I'd have a bit of public relations talk with them and get them to cool down a bit and then hear their problem and tell them what we were trying to do. And most of them then became very reasonable.
A rural school on the elephant's line of march from Samburu has one of the first and most serious elephant problems. Along the tracks pupils must walk each day, signs of the herds are everywhere. Trampled brush and ravaged trees. School attendance falls as frightened parents keep their children at home. The school is located far from major roads and settlements. The small staff of resident teachers are themselves terrorized by the elephant. Young and old, rural Kenyans rarely visit areas where big game is common. Most of these children had never seen an elephant before the animal's recent appearance near their school. The school is soon deserted. Over a period of weeks, a political furor arises. A local politician warns that unless the elephants are moved away, his constituents will defy the law and poison them. Farms over a large area are soon infested by a plague of elephants. By night and in uncanny silence, the herds can quickly demolish entire fields of corn. With so many elephant in the area, game wardens are powerless to protect the farms properly. Dozens of small landholdings called shambas are being raided and complaints are pouring in. The only American game warden in Kenya, Phil Snyder, is called on to witness the results of an elephant raid. Snyder hears how the elephants invaded this field late at night and ignored all efforts to scare them away.
Kama naingia pande hii, watu nafika kelele pande huo. Ndio nafanya.
Kelele gani? Ya hii debe.
Tunafika debe na kusema hey, namna hiyo.
Snyder is a convenient target for the farmers' frustration, both with the elephant and the Kenya government.
She was asking about compensation, whether there's any way that she can be compensated by us, the department, for the damage that our elephants have done in her shamba. And I explained to her there is a procedure. It's a very complicated procedure, and it takes months, years to be compensated. In the meantime, her children are hungry. The most interesting happening in wildlife conservation today has to be this conflict between elephants and man on this plains business. You've got 2,000 elephants leaving the area which is designated for wildlife into an agricultural area. And they're very large animals, which bring home very dramatically this whole conflict between man's territory and animals' territory. Every conflict that I know of in the past that has been like this has been resolved in favor of man. In this case, I mean, obviously it has to be resolved in favor of man because the country needs the agricultural production that is being lost as a result of these elephants being in agricultural land. But rather than following the traditional method of killing the animals, we're trying to move them back some 70 miles to where they came from.
The Kenya Game Department's only helicopter is summoned from Nairobi. It's in great demand for rescue and anti-poaching operations elsewhere and is only made available for a limited time. Piloted by the chief anti-poaching officer in Kenya, Ted Goss, the helicopter can fly low and slow enough to discover elephants in deep bush and, it is hoped, frighten them into moving on. The helicopter arrives in the Aberdares in mid-May as the alarm about elephants has reached a fever pitch. Concerned game officials, especially Rodney Elliott, fear they cannot keep angry farmers in check much longer. A team of game wardens, scouts, and rangers is assembled the following day. Phil Snyder from Mount Kenya National Park is drafted to help locate the elephants with his light plane. Ted Goss and Rodney Elliott will man the helicopter.
I also tried to call you on...
The elephant drive is an experiment, hastily assembled in an emergency atmosphere. No one is quite sure how the elephants will react to continuous aerial harassment, but Elliott and his team hope to show quick results and buy time for everyone to calm down.
From the night before last.
With John Potter.
Yeah. Because if they've been in the shambles at 6 o'clock this morning, we looked at everything else within range.
Right. Anyway, let's get going. You use what you see fit and try and locate the big bunch.
Snyder is first in the air. Precious helicopter time will be saved by using the light plane to locate the elephant. Snyder looks over a farm where elephant have been reported raiding the night before. Despite their size, the elephant are very difficult to locate. Here in farmland, they seem to have learned to hide in deep valleys and bush throughout the daylight hours. The elephant drive begins. Ted Goss has equipped the helicopter with police sirens and a loudspeaker system. He'll try to herd the elephants by bombarding them with infernal sounds. Bursting from the bush where it has been concealed, a panicked herd starts moving. There are more than 75 elephant in this herd alone. As the drive continues, the number of elephant discovered will exceed all previous estimates. Racing overland to keep pace with the helicopter, ground units are directed to prevent the elephant from doubling back. They'll be hard-pressed to keep up as the drive gains momentum. Several elephant herds are quickly routed from their hiding places on local farms. The elephant's tight social structure and herd instincts favor the drive. The more they're frightened, the closer they stick together. Despite their size, elephants can move with surprising speed, up to 25 miles an hour. Air and ground forces cooperate to keep the stampeding herds clear of farm buildings and settlements. The tensest moments of the drive come when the elephants must be forced to cross major roads. Leaving a farm it has plagued for months, this herd approaches a road which has been cleared of traffic well ahead of time. Closely pursued by the helicopter, the elephants will pause only to assist a newborn infant bringing up the rear. It's probably only a few days old. After 3 days, the helicopter is called back to Nairobi and the drive ends. The operation is judged a success. Over 1,000 elephant have been moved off to the fringes of settled areas. Local farmers are pleased and relieved as peace returns to the Aberdares. The greatest number of elephant have been driven onto several large ranches to the north of the Aberdares.
I'm not quite sure which ones these are.
Before the recent ban on hunting in Kenya, many of these ranchers made an asset of wildlife by charging visitors to hunt on their land. Now, at least temporarily, men like Guy Grant are equipped to accommodate the refugee elephants.
I feel that there's no reason why we shouldn't keep a good number of elephant, 500 to 1,000, in this Laikipia ranching area. From a practical point of view, they knock down some trees and do some bush clearing. I don't have a bulldozer, and they take the place and improve the grassland. My cattle are herded. I don't have paddocks apart from just around the house, so I don't expect them to do me any harm, and it is a great pleasure for my family and myself, my friends, to be able to watch them.
Behind them, the elephants have left a trail of destruction across countless small farms. The impact of their raids will be felt in many homes for months to come. A family of 15 has lost its entire corn crop. Subsistence farmers like these live on a narrow margin in normal times. Kenya's annual per capita income is $217. A family conference is convened. The father is told that fees are due when his elder children return to school. 40 shillings apiece, about $6. With no crop to sell, he asks, where will the money come from? One of the children answers, as you always tell us, we will trust in God. This evening's meal is a slim one, and not much better is in sight for weeks to come. No one here will be allowed to starve because of the elephant, but the damage done is real and painful. Under such circumstances, reminiscent of life on the old American frontier, ideas of wildlife conservation find shallow roots at best. A hungry family has only fragile mud walls to protect them. And there is a real fear of what could happen if the elephant come in the night once again. Only a few miles from areas ravaged by the elephants lies the boundary of Aberdare National Park. The park has its own population of elephant, restrained by a gigantic ditch, the only successful elephant barrier so far devised in Kenya. But 30 miles of ditch over 10 feet deep require heroic efforts to maintain, and breaks sometimes develop, allowing elephant from the park to invade nearby farms. Inside Aberdare Park, it's another world. From game lodges like the Ark, visitors to Kenya enjoy a perspective on the elephant very different from the average farmers. Here, the elephant is a creature of delight, to be enjoyed in comfort and security.
Yes, of course. How did you see him so quickly? That was incredible.
On display within national parks, wild animals are a valuable national asset to Kenya. Tourism provides the nation's second largest source of foreign income. But the joy and inspiration of the parks is rarely shared by ordinary Kenyans. Few of them can afford the entrance fees or the cost of hotels. Unlike the frightened, elusive elephant that have been raiding the farms, those in the park are bold and highly visible.
What I'm going to try and do is to get a little closer to these elephants without disturbing them, and then switch the engine off, and in absolute silence, one can sometimes get the elephant to respond to a call and walk up to the car and have a look at us.
An old hand in the African bush and an ex-big game hunter, Sam Weller sometimes gives park visitors his own unique insight into elephant behavior.
Elephants communicate with each other, and the communicating call is a vibration in the throat, which can vary from a purr like a house cat to a roll of drums. The challenge of an elephant can be heard half a mile away. I don't think they necessarily think that one's an elephant, but they don't think that you're human, and they don't think you're dangerous. I just admire the elephant. I suppose I've lived with them most of my life, and I like them very much. He's a highly intelligent animal, and I like the kind of country he lives in.
Only a week after the first drive, the elephants have begun to return to the Aberdare farms. A herd of 300 invade a small valley and drive its residents from their homes.
Loja iko pamoja yote sasa, hesabu ni kama gapi hapa? Zaidi ya 100. Ukenda sasa mimi naona kwa hii pande hapa sisi iko ndio.
Rangers from Aberdare Park, aided by Phil Snyder's plane, desperately tried to move the herd.
Kutoka mahali hao iko. Kidogo pakikana huko.
darkness forces a halt to the operation, the elephant still remain in the valley. Few of the residents will dare return home before morning. The prolonged presence of elephant in settled areas brings an inevitable and tragic result. Twice this year in the Aberdares, farmers have been killed by elephant, apparently in unprovoked attacks. One was the father of a newborn son. No great public outcry followed these incidents. Death by accident and misadventure is common here. Crocodile, lion, and buffalo, as well as elephant, kill dozens of Kenyans each year. But each fatality is a blow to the cause of conservation in Kenya. And the government, which claims sole ownership of all wildlife, must assume full responsibility for controlling it. Aberdare Park headquarters is the focus of rising protest and complaint as the elephant return. Flying from Nairobi, the acting director of Kenya's national parks has promised immediate action. 18 days after the first helicopter drive, a second is to be launched at once.
Create the situation which existed before.
In hours of discussion, wardens and local officials try to sort out various reports of marauding elephant. The problem is complicated by the presence of two different elephant groups, those from Samburu and others that have come from the national park. Though little precise information is on hand, all agree that action must be taken now.
But let's just find out what the problem is right now and how to deal with it. That's it. Yes, sir.
We all agreed this particular bunch of elephants are in fact a mountain elephant.
Mountain
yes.
elephant.
They are in fact causing immediate problems. They were in fact in Charles Harris wheat, maize and sorghum apparently last night. And they have been raiding around the area in the Moyo Valley and the settlements there. And they are probably the easiest lot to deal with. They're closest to the forest. And so perhaps we could consider them a priority.
Driving operation that we did with the helicopter 2 weeks ago was very successful. The problem came up in holding them there. I mean, we moved most of the elephants out of this area, and now most of them have come back. So I think the problem is to repeat that operation with the backup of men there with the stop line and holding the elephants there.
Right. Yes, we accept that position. Now, the 100 elephants on Solio will be driven back to their forest. Now, we have the helicopter here. We have the fuel. We have everybody that we require here. So can we just say now...
A rough plan of operations is at length agreed upon.
One day to prepare and we drive those? Or is it, can we do
No, we should be
tomorrow?
able to move that 100 into the forest tomorrow.
Difficulties plague the new drive from the beginning. The money available allows only 10 days for Ted Goss and the helicopter to complete the job. There's little time for reconnaissance and detailed planning. And the elephant themselves seem less tractable, frustrating the wardens time after time. Some elephant herds that have been driven off before seem to be growing accustomed to the helicopter. Now, instead of fleeing at its approach, they sometimes defy it, while wheeling in frenzied confusion. Battered by milling adults, the young elephants try desperately to stay on their feet and keep up with their mothers. For them, the drive is a terrifying and punishing ordeal. The elephant calves are amazingly tough and resilient. One is knocked off his feet, here, but bounces up again and manages to stay with the herd. The adult elephants have never abandoned a calf, even in the most frantic moments of the drive. On the first day, the new drive bogs down. It takes hours to move one herd just a few miles. And some groups of elephant must be left behind on farms they have molested for months. Time and time again, farmer Mickey Fernandez has been invaded by the elephant. He has no sooner repaired the damage from one raid than he is struck by another. Now, his patience is exhausted.
The future for the elephants, as far as I'm concerned, or should be, I reckon, is that they shouldn't be here, and they must be removed back to their lands. And when they get out of number, they must, and the vegetation isn't enough, they must shoot them, or remove them, or sell them, just like we do with our cattle. After all, it's exactly the same.
An all-out effort is planned to drive a stubborn herd away from the Fernandez farm. Faith in the helicopter, once high, now is eroding rapidly among Fernandez and his neighbors.
God, I'd love to get Jack Barra here and make him come here. I'm fed up with these dolphins. I really am. You want to see the damage they're doing to us. And we've waited for over a year for this. I'm really livid about it. Go and take all of them and put them in these gardens.
Where are they?
They're just up here, Phil. This morning they were in this chamber here that we preserved. We preserved for the bloody dry weather. We're going to put it into a pit. It's ruined. Now they're coming up here and they've gone up into this area here.
Okay, I found about 50 up in there.
Well, I don't know where they all are, but this was a hell of a nonsense here last night. They've been right here. You can see their droppings right here last night. They were screaming and yelling here last night.
Well, we better get cracking on this lot here then.
Rodney, you don't think...
My guess is that's the same lot, you know. I think it's the mountain lot.
We get cracking. Pick up these two lots and drive them up to the group of 40 and take the whole lot up. Meanwhile, send one ground party to check on this report of Kamau's to confirm that they are still in that angle between the road and the river. Okay?
The most unmanageable elephant herd encountered so far shows little inclination to move at the helicopter's approach. Probably these elephants have faced the helicopter before during the first drive. Now, their fear of the helicopter seems almost equally balanced by their reluctance to leave the farm. Brings the helicopter down until he is almost touching the milling herd. It's a dangerous maneuver, a last resort to keep the elephant moving. The elephant will move no further and take their last defiant stand. The elephant break back. Tragically, they now seem to feel most secure here on the farms where in the long run their presence cannot be tolerated. The helicopter, failing here, will move on to other problem areas. A very large elephant herd near Rumuruti, to the northwest of the Aberdares, has been causing trouble for months. Now, due to a rising tide of complaints, it must be forced to move. The herd is the largest single group of elephants encountered on the drive.
Charlie Echo, Charlie Echo, Charlie Echo.
Goss and the other wardens find the herd easy to get moving, but hard to direct. Infiltrating this area over the years, the elephant evidently have now adopted it as their home. the elephant divert from the intended line of march. And Ted Goss will admit that finally we had to respect their wishes.
Our plan was to get all these elephants down onto those ranches close to their habitat. With the Rumaruti elephants, we haven't been able to do that. And the reason we haven't been able to do it is probably because they've been in that area several years. And they know that area, you know, and they knew. In fact, one could almost see the elephants thinking, well, why do they want us to go this way? You know, the right way for us is that way.
After a frustrating, protracted struggle, the elephant moved, but to a destination of their own choosing, a large forest where they still offer a threat to settlements and crops. Overall, this second drive has been marked by frequent compromise, imposed by the will of the elephants. As it ends, Warden Phil Snyder is frustrated and far from complacent.
Well, I mean, at the moment we're feeling in the dark, and we're just trying to find systems that will work to contain this problem. No, I mean, obviously we can't go on with the type of operation that we've just done. I mean, we have to have something that approximates a solution, a closer approximation than we achieved this time. The driving operation itself, I think, can be successful. The follow-up is the difficult part, keeping them where you've moved them to, because this is not nearly as exciting a part of the work as actually moving the elephants. I mean, the work of having men stationed at a line and holding them at the line and not letting them come back, which is a job that is endless. I mean, it's a job that can go on for 3 months, 6 months, 10 years, who knows?
Like a threatening army, the elephant require large numbers of rangers merely to guard against them. But men are no match for elephant at this waiting game. The ground forces' efforts are sporadic and ineffective. By now, the elephant are bringing permanent changes to many human lives. The school so long disrupted by elephant has chosen to retreat from its vulnerable location. Volunteer crews of parents dismantle the school buildings while the headmaster makes a final entry in his official diary.
Today, 28th of July, 1978, because of the continuation of the elephants straying this school, it has been found necessary to move it to a better site where there will be no longer elephant interruption. Before leaving this site, children had stayed at home for 11 weeks just because of the elephants. We hope to ask the minister concerned to give a helping hand, though not necessarily compensation.
The new school springs up near a main road where the children can be more easily protected from elephant. Classes resume and normal life goes on.
Today we are going to learn a word called jumping.
Look at the next one.
Say jumping.
Jumping.
What's going to jump?
Look at the next
Samir?
Do you have another one?
Jump. What are you doing?
I'm jumping.
What is Samir doing?
Yes.
For these children, this time of the elephant has made a lasting impression on their lives. It seems likely that this next generation of Kenyans will largely decide the fate of their remaining wildlife.
Another word called sleeping.
But only time will tell whether they will come to regard the elephant as a malicious nuisance or as part of a unique heritage that is theirs alone and must be preserved. On the Aberdare farms, elephant raids have now continued for almost 6 months. For farmer Charles Harris and his neighbors, the helicopter drive at first aroused hope and now brings disillusionment.
Well, the elephants were gone one day and we were all cock-a-hoop and we thought this is marvelous. The troubles ended and they've all gone back to where people really want them to be, all the lodges and whatnot. And the next night our neighbor rang up and he says, the elephant are back again. I would have thought if the elephant aren't moved properly that the final thing is shooting, possibly. But one would like to keep away from that. I personally, as a farmer, am aware of the shortage of elephant now, but I'd like to keep away from that. But the only answer is to shoot them, unless something is done concrete to move them from here.
Poached in the north, crowded and harassed here in the Aberdares, the elephant have chosen to remain on dangerous ground. As weeks pass, there is more and more talk of shooting them. But even now, Rodney Elliott clings to the hope that the situation can somehow be kept under control.
Once you start shooting, inevitably it snowballs. I've seen this many times over the years. It's very easy to pull the trigger and destroy an animal. It's much more difficult to find another solution. Once the Director of Wildlife decided that shooting is the answer, then it's not going to be shooting in one area, one place, in one chamber. It's going to be shooting throughout the country.
The inevitable happens. First one, then two, and a third elephant are shot in defense of the farms. This one, on Charles Harris's land, is discovered at daybreak by some of his workers. Few of them have ever seen such a giant close up. And even now, the elephant inspires awe and wonder. Harris and Rodney Elliott arrived to inspect the carcass. Who killed this elephant is something of a mystery. No game warden nor any of Harris's private armed guards will admit to it, though limited shooting has been officially authorized.
There you are. That looks like it, doesn't it?
Yes, it certainly does.
And there's nothing under here?
A bullet hole is found on the elephant's back. Conducting this post-mortem is a deeply sorrowful occasion for Rodney Elliott. For months he has worked to prevent this, pleading for patience, time, and understanding. But at last, for this elephant at least, the hard-won period of grace has run out. To check for further wounds, the carcass must be rolled over. It weighs at least 3 tons. Patches of the dead elephant's hide are hung to warn the rest of the herd away. It's a temporary solution at best. To date, elephant problems continue in the Aberdares. More helicopter drives and scientific studies are promised, but there is an ominous possibility that the government might decide on more drastic action, the only certain solution known. A nightmare vision of what could happen in the Aberdares was provided in the small African nation of Rwanda in 1975. Compressed into an ever smaller area by human habitation, 140 animals had little but farmers' crops to eat and nowhere left to run. After years of conflict and controversy, the hard-pressed Rwandan government concluded that there was only one thing left to do. Two elephant herds were cut down in just a few days. 106 were shot, and 26 orphaned calves were darted with tranquilizers. They were translocated to a national park where so far they have survived. The fate of the Rwanda elephants sent a shudder around the world. In other places, in many other African nations, similar problems could force similar solutions. Tragic collisions between elephants and men can be avoided in the long run only if great tracts of African wilderness can be protected and preserved. But many of these very areas have been ravaged by poachers. Increasingly, the African elephant is trapped between settled areas where he is unwelcome and the haunts of poachers where he is certainly doomed. These elephant in Kenya have been hard hit by poachers and now make their last desperate gesture of defense. Massing in a huge herd, forming a solid wall around the calves with their bodies, the adult elephants raise their trunks high. They are catching the distinctive scent of man. More than ever, and with reason, this is what the elephant must fear.